we've been talking about wild places. We've been doing so because the root word of wilderness is wild. And it is into the wilderness, wild places, that God leads his people. But he doesn't lead them into wild places alone. He understands that we are not made for the wilderness. We'll die in the wilderness. That's what the wilderness is. It's a place where people go to die. You can't. So God goes with us, and we have to make space for him. Build me a sanctuary, build me a mikdash, that I may dwell in you. And that's the tabernacle. We've talked about the tabernacle. We've talked about making space for God. And now we go into the Holy of Holies. The full presence of God. The Shekinah glory of God. And what do we see in the Holy of Holies? We see the Ark of the Covenant. Now, in Hebrew, the Ark of the Covenant is called Aron. Say Aron. Aron comes from the Hebrew word or. Say or. The Hebrew word or means light. It means light. So when God said, let there be light, he said, let there be or. Let there be light. Okay? Now, the Ark of the Covenant is described to you in some detail in the text. God basically says, get acacia wood and make a box. He gives us the dimensions. Then he says, cover the inside of the box with gold. Cover the outside of the box with gold. What he doesn't tell us is how much gold to cover it with. That's up to you. My question to you is, how much gold would you put inside that box? How much gold would you cover that box with? Gold flake, a quarter inch, half inch, an inch? We don't know. How much would you? Then we're told about the ark that it has a cover. Now that cover is sometimes called the mercy seat. And on that cover there are two angels. And their wings come and they touch each other. And between those angels on that mercy seat is the Shekinah glory of God. Now, that cover is made of solid gold. One piece of gold. Angels, cover. Well, we know the dimensions of that cover because it has to fit on top of the ark, but again, we don't know how much gold was used. We don't know how big the angels were. God doesn't tell us how big to make them. How big would you make them? By the way, did you know the men who were to craft the tabernacle and all of its furnishings, they were to be skilled? The Hebrew word for skilled is skilled of heart. I always thought that they were tradesmen. They were good with their hands. In order to build the ark, you have to be good with your heart. So they make this, and if you're going to serve God with all your soul, all your strength, all your heart, how much gold would you use to make that cover? Then you're told that you have to carry this thing, and you have to put gold rings on the side so you can put acacia wood poles covered with gold. Okay? A lot of gold. Now here's my question. Here's my question. Is gold a heavy or light metal? Very heavy. Very heavy metal. Very heavy. Now my next question. Is gold a strong, solid metal or is it soft? Soft. It's very soft. Well, now you got a problem. A little bit of a catch-22. Because the more gold you put on this thing, the heavier it gets. But the heavier it gets, the gold cannot sustain its own weight, so it gets, do you see the problem? So if I make the rings with more gold to hold the poles, but that makes it heavier, so I have to, how much gold? Then, listen, this is what the rabbis ask. How many Levites did it take to carry the ark? Because it's heavy. I mean, I got pictures of 2 guys in the front and 2 guys in the back. But this thing is heavy. There's no way. On top of that, what's inside the ark? The 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. They're heavy. Now you start to ask, how big were they? So the rabbis ask, how many how many Levites did it take to carry the ark? And you know what their answer is? You don't carry the Aaron. The Aaron carries you. Let me translate this. You don't carry the light. The light carries you. I like that. I like that. In other words, the presence of God, Ark of the Covenant, you don't carry God. God carries you. And for 40 years in the wilderness, that ark would precede God's people. And I really don't see, according to that rabbinic midrash, I don't see them carrying God. I see them holding on as God led them through the wilderness. They're just holding on. Now, you might be asking, why am I talking about the ark here? Why didn't I talk about the ark in the tabernacle? I'm talking about the ark here because of where we are. We are on the east side of the Jordan River. Right across from us is Jericho. It's modern Jericho. Between us was the Jordan River. We are standing on these ancient banks of the Jordan River. And when the Jordan River flooded, it doesn't flood here anymore, not to that extent, because the Israelis and the Jordanians use the Jordan River as a water source. So it doesn't flood to what it used to in the ancient period. Nowhere near. In fact, the Jordan River today is just a small stream. It doesn't flood anymore because that's all been removed. But in the ancient period, during the rainy season, at the end of rainy season, the Jordan River, the word Jordan means descending. And there's about an 800-foot drop from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. And I'm telling you, this Jordan River was raging. And at flood stage, at the end of rainy season, it was at its height. Now, I want you to hear the text. Listen to the story. God speaks to Joshua, and God says to Joshua, listen, tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the end of the Jordan waters, go and stand in the river. Okay? Now let me remind you, the last river they saw was the Nile. In fact, anybody under 60 years old didn't see the Nile River, because we know at Kadesh Barnea, everybody who was 20 years old and older perished. Anyone who was 20 years younger than 20 years lived, because 20 is the age of maturity, age of adulthood, according to the Mishnah. So they had never seen a river. There is no other body of fresh water in the Middle East other than the Sea of Galilee. These people have been living in the wilderness. They haven't seen water like this. They haven't experienced water like this. And they come here to the east side of the Jordan, and they're confronted with a raging, angry river at flood stage. Now, for the Canaanites, they viewed the Jordan River as Baal's protection to the east. Baal, the great god of the Canaanites, that fertility god, that rain god, that thunder god, would protect his people from the east by the Jordan River. Look, you can see Jericho right over there. In my opinion, this is ATG according to George, okay? In my opinion, those people at Jericho were blessing Baal because the Jordan was flooding. It was preventing the Israelites from crossing. Bless Baal. He's protected us. And even more, listen to the text. Listen to the story. I pick it up again in verse 15. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. It's not rainy season. All during harvest. In other words, it's flooding, and the Hebrew is clear. I mean, it is flooding at the height of the dry season. It's flooding when it shouldn't be flooding. I can see the people in Jericho saying, isn't this amazing? Look how Baal is protecting us. The Jordan is flooding when it shouldn't be flooding, and now we know why, because the Israelites are on the other side. See, they'll never cross. That's the way they see it over there, in my opinion. The way we see it over here, let's keep reading the text. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest, yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge. Now look at, as soon as their feet touch the water, look at the banks here. Look at the drop off. Now the water is right up lapping here, and the priests step out. That's it. I mean, they would tumble all the way down. Look at. I'm telling you, there's about a 20-foot drop from where you are, at least to where I am. And understand also, they haven't seen a river. They haven't seen anything like this. So let's pick up the narrative again. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest, yet as soon as the priest who carried the, not ark, the light, reached the Jordan, their feet touched the water's edge. I'm telling you, touch the water's edge, you've got to be going down. The water from upstream stopped flowing. Okay, now, I want you to notice something. This is not like crossing the Red Sea. At the Red Sea, Moses held his staff up, the Ruach of God blew, and it separated the waters. There was a wall of water on your right, and there was a wall of water on your left. That's not what happened here. Listen, as soon as the priest who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a great heap a distance away by a town called Adam, in the vicinity of Zarethan. And while the water flowing down to the Sea of Arabah, the Salt Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jordan. The priest who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground. They stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan while all the Israelites passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. For 40 years, the Ark of the Covenant of God went before them. And when it stopped, they started building the tabernacle around the Ark so that only Levites had seen it. They may have seen it as the Levites carried the Ark, or rather, the light carried them. But I don't think people in the tribe of Dan or the tribe of Zebulun, they just followed. They were so far back, they never saw the ark. But here, the priest step out into the water. The water stops and backs up all the way to Adam, and then dries out all the way to the Salt Sea. The priests stand in the middle on dry ground, and every Israelite passes by through, as it were, the light of God. Now they can praise Baal for flood stage at an unseasonable time. I praise God because God set this thing up in such a wild way to show you his people who have followed him in wild places and through wild places. So that when it comes to something they've never seen before, they've never heard before, and God says, this is what I want you to do, you know what they do? They do it. And what happens when they do? They step into this water, this chaotic water, the light of God goes into this chaotic water, and that chaotic water is backed up all the way to Adam. Could it be? Could it be a people called by God, redeemed by God through the plagues, shaped by God in the wilderness, and then commanded by God, and with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their strength, in the light of God, step where He calls them to step, and they are the light that pushes back chaos all the way back to Adam. God doesn't want to tame a wild world. He wants to redeem it. God is set to redeem a creation. And not only does He want to love you, He wants to love through you. You have been blessed to be a blessing. In order for Him to love through you and to love through me, be prepared to be taken to some wild places where He will shape you. And then you and I and we together as the people of God will walk together. And if He says, do it, we'll do it in His light, in His love, by His power, to His glory.